Well, the meeting was open, so I will not tell you what happened there. So please, if you have any questions, and please let me introduce also Ms. Emina Japarova, who is the first Deputy Minister of Information Policy of Ukraine. She came specifically to promote our draft resolution on the human rights in Crimea in the third committee, but it coincided with today's meeting, and she was there. She can also comment on some issues if you will have some interest. Please.
Ambassador, if I can ask you maybe two questions, or to you and the Minister. Firstly, how are you going to stop this election? Is all that's going to happen as the Security Council speaks out, members of the Security Council, or is there anything else you can do? And the second question, you mentioned that the Minister comes from Crimea. Does she feel the international community has forgotten about Crimea and basically Russia has won on that one?
Okay, I will shortly try to answer your question, and then I will continue. Well, of course, we don't have any physical tools to stop the elections from happening, but I think first of all, the Security Council had already sent a signal. Even those countries in the Council who are not probably, the best defenders of Ukraine. But even they, mentioned a word or two about the illegality or, normalcy of the situation when the elections be held or will be held in the uncontrolled areas of Ukraine. So this is the signal. Secondly, well, obviously, the only diplomatic way to do things from the UN is to keep pressure and to keep the focus of attention. Otherwise, it will be forgotten. But here comes your second question, and I will ask Emine to answer.
Warm greetings from Ukraine, from Crimea. Actually, as far as I'm your colleague, I used to be a journalist working for the local TV channel ATR, the only Crimean Tatar TV channel that was squeezed out right in 2014 because they didn't have and couldn't have any license as far as they remained objective Ukrainian media. So by being a Crimean Tatar, by being a former journalist, by feeling unbearable situation right after the occupation and absence of any possibilities to remain a journalist, I left Crimea in half a year after the occupation. What I can feel and what I feel now by having a family in Crimea is that, yes, of course, without this strong international support of non-recognition policy, of numerous resolutions, declarations, statements of European Parliament, OSCE, Council of Europe, United Nations, the scale of the repression in Crimea would be even higher. So these resolutions, even though they cannot get the territory back, they save lives. Yes, of course, we fixed the peak of the attention to the Crimean issue in 2014 and 15, and it's not yet there. But we believe this is about that UN mission is not allowed in Crimea. I mean, whenever it goes to Crimea, it always has only one wall. And the name of that wall, of that bridge, of that obstacle is the Russian Federation. We have the ICJ preliminary decisions that is about to restore the activities of Majlis, the self-governing body. What do? They ignore this decision. It is about the access of the United Mission monitoring group to Crimea. What do? They ignore this decision. So it's about an absolute violent ignorance of any international laws, regulations, recommendations, resolutions. So I think that we have to keep in mind the factor that the diplomatic pressure is to be kept on as far as it's not only the papers and the letters and the words, it's about saving lives. And I know for sure that Crimean Tatars, Ukrainians in Crimea are very accurate in following every single resolution because they still wait till the situation would be changed. Thank you.
Yes. Since everything is significant, whoever Mr. Putin, President Putin, support or he enjoys support from Europe, how would you comment his decision to give a medal of Nevsky to Serbian President Alexander Vučić, given a few days ago?
Well, we can, okay. Well, I can comment on the issue which is not the Ukrainian issue.
I mean, put it in the context?
Yes, of course. I will simply put it. I will not comment, anything on the, let's say, attitude to this gesture on the side of the President of Serbia. But I would certainly alert all those who think that President Putin is doing things just, because it's a kind of, symbolic. It's not correct. Everything he is doing has some meaning, some, symbolism, of course, too. And by doing this, he is trying to keep, some countries or the leaders of some countries closer to Russia. But I think that, the leaders are not stupid, and they can learn things. And I think that everybody will draw its own conclusions from what is happening now in Russia, what Russia is doing with Ukraine, and what Russia is doing with all its neighbors and all over the world, and how much Russia is threatening the world, and enjoying, staying as, I would say, a country surrounded by enemies. They simply enjoy this fact, which is strange enough, I think, when you enjoy that you are surrounded by enemies. I remember some years ago, Chancellor Merkel asked a very clever question from Mr. Putin when he was sort of complaining that, we are surrounded by enemies, everybody is against Russia. And she said, look, don't you think that it's contrary different? That you should think why you are the only one who is thinking this way?
One more question. Ukrainian TV channel Premye. Today we saw pretty much powerful support of European countries to Ukraine, but still we don't have any way to push on Russia to hear international community. So the first question I want to ask you: do you think is one of the critical points when probably it is the way to think that UN needs new changes? Probably taking a veto vote from Russia, or also is there any possibility of nearest meeting of Normandy for countries?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that we're very thankful to all the partners of Ukraine in the Security Council. As you may notice, there is already, I would say, even formalized the group of friends of Ukraine in the Security Council. Some members will leave the Council from the 1st of January next year, but others will join it, like Germany and Belgium, and they will join the ranks of the group of friends. So the issue of Ukraine, does not depend anymore on just one country, Ukraine or United States. It's a wider issue. From today's meeting, I would also draw the conclusion that it was quite strange to see the vote, even if it was procedural, when just one country votes in favor and everybody else votes against or abstain. So Russia was the only one today on this issue to give the floor or to invite the so-called representatives of DNR and LNR. So which shows you the attitude of other Security Council members to the issue. Probably this is a small change, but it's very, I would say, illustrative, and it says you a lot that I would certainly not just hope, but I'm sure that with years to come, the number of countries which would give unequivocal support to Ukrainian position will only grow. And for this, we need to work hard. But again, even without Ukrainian Security Council, we are able to keep the issue very much alive. And when you hear from some saying that it's like the Ukraine fatigue or something, it's not true. The Ukrainian issue is very much alive in the United Nations. And you will also see it in the coming weeks when the third already resolution on the human rights in Crimea and the city of Sevastopol will be adopted in the third committee. Then we are going to have the brand new resolution on the militarization of Crimea and the Azov Sea in the plenary meeting later this year. So there are issues, new issues, and they're gaining more and more support with every General Assembly session.
It's just, I wanted to reflect to the question of my colleague about the comments of the decision of Putin. I personally have no trust to the president of Russian Federation. As far as I remember exactly well, the events of 2014 when the occupation happened, I remember that the Russian army was there. And do you remember the press conference of the President Putin saying that, oh no, this is not the Russian army. You can buy the military uniform in every single shop. And then, in a couple of months after the so-called true referendum, of which the representative of Russian Federation was speaking about, because I don't believe in any free referendum whenever there is an army of any country on any territory. And afterwards, and after that, I understood that any words or any decisions of that leader of that country cannot be trusted, because it's manipulative, it has its own task. So,
seeing all this that is happening in your backyard, what are the hopes of the Ukraine to join the NATO? And is the NATO a good solution for Ukraine and for the region?
Certainly, yes. My answer would be absolutely affirmative. I think we are much closer to NATO and also to the European Union than before this conflict has started. I remember the famous phrase by one of the journalists, sorry, I don't remember his name, but he said something like that by annexing Crimea and invading into the east of Ukraine, Putin has simply created the enemy out of the whole people of Ukraine, which in turn would bring inevitably Ukraine much closer to NATO and EU. So he kind of, well, by his intentions, he reached, absolutely opposite thing. He wanted to keep Ukraine as a part of a Ruski Mir. Now the result of this stupid policy, almost 5 years, is that Ukraine will definitely become the member of NATO and the EU, which Putin hates, and we are glad. Unfortunately, it will still cost a lot of Ukrainian lives, but nothing is achievable just by bare hands. Probably at least this blood will be proven in the future for the future generation of Ukrainians.
From my perception, that EU and Euro-Atlantic integration was always the bone in their throat, in the throat of Russian Federation, in terms of not allowing Ukraine to be integrated in the European system of values, in this European family. And I think that the war that we have today is not only the physical war, it's not only about the occupation, it's about the civilization choice of Ukraine that we're fighting for. And for us, it's not only the security issues that are actually brought us to this idea that has been articulated for 25 years in Ukraine, and different attitudes we had in the society and among the politicians. And today, by this aggression, Putin indeed promotes this kind of identity of Ukraine that is based on security issues that are based, in turn, on this Euro-Atlantic integration. So this is the consequence, actually, of the aggressive policy that we face today in Crimea, in Donbass.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.